Hello and welcome, everyone. Welcome to a celebration of the life of Dennis Holland. Brother, uncle, friend, mentor, colleague, teacher, and coach. Mathematician, historian, and the ultimate Derryfield sports fan. He embodied so many roles for us to remember, so many qualities for us to emulate. We were fortunate that 3 years after this school was founded, Dennis chose to visit his friend, our first headmaster, Philip Hugney. Dennis was on his way from Logan Airport to Concord for an interview at a boarding school when our wise headmaster offered him a math position on the spot, and Dennis chose Derryfield. For all of us, Dennis represented excellence. My first memory of Dennis was the surprising moment when he struck up a conversation with me in my second year here. We're second year here, right? Word on the street was that Dennis only started speaking with new faculty when he decided they were doing quality work for Derryfield. So I was honored. Derryfield had protective passion for the school. Dennis had protective passion for Derryfield. Dennis also had deep passion for mathematics. He loved mathematical challenges and puzzles, and he served as department chair for 40 years. He relished figuring out how to reach every student, how to make mathematical concepts understandable to the individual. That was a riddle that he was dedicated to solving, and the reason that many of you are here today. His affinity for facts and statistics and competition drew him to lead our Granite State Challenge team. They brought home numerous titles and even television fame. But the greatest puzzle he solved was his annual duel with the school-wide academic schedule. His formidable intellect enabled him to become an expert designer. For years, he built the schedule every summer, all summer, by hand. He went above and beyond to try to fill every student's wishes, even if it meant starting the whole matrix all over again once it had been completed, in order to get that last student into the courses that she wanted. Dennis's professionalism was also exemplary. He was an AP exam writer and exam scorer for the College Board for many, many years. And he led every 5- and 10-year first accreditation and then reaccreditation process in the school's history. Dennis visited many other schools on reaccreditation teams for our accrediting organization, and that knowledge and experience that he gained from those visits in turn helped Derryfield to grow into a well-run institution. Dennis's dedication to excellence, coupled with his love of athletics, made him a legendary coach. He coached soccer and basketball in the early years of the school's life. He coached boys basketball for 28 years in all. Our fledgling school had small teams, but his commitment built them. During the early years, before Derryfield had a gym, we practiced at St. Joseph's School, and every game was an away game. Coach Holland would drive the students to St. Joe's and then drive the student athletes home to Nashua and Amherst before driving himself home to Milford. The pinnacle of Coach Holland's basketball career was certainly the 1983 state championship against Orford, which Derryfield won 78-52. This was Derryfield's first state championship title in any sport, and the 78 is still today the record for the most points scored in a Class S NHIAA championship game. The victorious team was captained by Sean Stone and included players like Dave Larrabee, Miles Gettings, Mike Puddington, and Matt Perlington. These players dominated Class S, and some are here with us today. Dennis was the ultimate team player, and his dedication to Derryfield exceptional. He saw the school as a collaborative endeavor with his colleagues, and that we all led the school together. And as such, he'd answer the phones or be the Derryfield representative at a playoff game or do any task that helped his colleagues. And he never took a sick day in his 49 years of service. Dennis once reflected, "I cannot remember a single day, whether coaching or teaching, that I did not strive to do my best. I didn't try to impress anybody, just did the best job I could. Did it work? Always? No, but it always happened." And while his exterior could sometimes be gruff, the reality was that Dennis had a warm, empathetic heart. When I was the head of the upper school, and a student was grieving or struggling with health difficulties, I sometimes needed to ask teachers to cull to the essentials, as Jennifer Malconi would say, to reduce the workload that a student had to manage during a difficult time. Dennis was among the most flexible, most willing to reduce assignments or dismiss them, and the most ready to support a student. His heart was enormously touched when students, alumni, and families wrote him thank you cards, or when he received an email about a graduate success in college math or the world of work. He was so proud of them. A man of excellence, professionalism, and heart, Dennis imbued New Hampshire values in his students and in his school. Every day, he guided others to aspire to competence, independence, hard work, humility, and fair play. And in his last years, he taught us about caring for others and soldiering through suffering with dignity. Please join me in welcoming trustee and colleague Chuck Sanborn to give the invocation.
Good afternoon. May we join together in meditative spirit as we give thanks for and celebrate the life of Dennis Holland and the gifts he so willingly shared with us as individuals and as a community. Creator Spirit, source of all being, and known by many names, be with us this afternoon as we gather with heavy hearts, saddened by Dennis Holland's passing and the loss of a valued, devoted, and loved colleague, teacher, coach, master scheduler, fan, and treasured friend. Over time, our sadness will be transformed into thanksgiving for the myriad gifts, talents, and energy that Dennis blessed us with and so willingly shared day in and day out. We each have cherished memories, and through them, Dennis will continue to nurture and enrich our lives. Khalil Gibran wrote that a wise teacher does not bid you enter into the house of his or her wisdom, but rather lead you to the threshold of your own mind. Dennis was such a teacher. Let us open our hearts to the Dennis story. Amen.
Thank you, Chuck. May we please welcome Dennis's sister, Caroline Craig, to share some family memories.
Good afternoon. First of all, I'd like to thank you each and every one for coming here to share the life of my much-loved brother. My brief collection of memories does not claim chronological accuracy, but is presented as a tribute to our big brother. In 1942, Dennis Holland was born to Joseph and Mildred Holland in New Boston, New Hampshire. He was the fourth child. After three girls, he was a welcome addition to the family. From his earliest childhood, he showed evidence that he was a loner. In school, he was a diligent student, but did not tend to accumulate a large number of friends. By the time he was high school age, another three girls and a baby brother were added to this family. Dennis had his eye on a college education and realized that as one of 8 children, he had little hope of his parents' abilities to finance his college education. As a result, he focused on earning a full scholarship by virtue of outstanding grades. He was able to attend St. Paul's School in Concord and loved every minute of it. This focused his attention on long hours of lonely study, but his dream of scholarship came true. He applied to Williams College and was accepted. He left home shortly before his 18th birthday and worked in Milford for a year to buy a car and save money for necessary books and other college fees. His years at Williams laid a foundation in the study of math and all related subjects, which resulted in a lifetime career in the classroom. The Vietnam War and military draft loomed at this time in his life, resulting in his enlisting in the Marine Reserves. He was assigned to Cape Pendleton in California for a 6-month stint, followed by 10 years of summer camp. After he completed his 6-month obligation, he found a job in a nearby high school teaching math. During this time, he drove east each summer to stay at our home and found summer work in our town. I felt as though those summer days began a new relationship with my brother, which remained in my heart all my life. After 2 years, he made the decision to move back east and was able to find a job teaching at Milford High School. Shortly, he was contacted by a Mr. Hugney. I guess he contacted Mr. Hugney by accident, I hear. An instructor he had known at St. Paul's School and a man he respected highly. Mr. Hugney offered him a job, you know where, right here. Little did he know at that time that he had found his lifetime career. I won't even try to describe the impact on his students. There are plenty of people here who can do that. He did, however, tell me over the years that he was asked several times to consider administration, and each time he declined, preferring to stay in a classroom where he had daily contact with students. In his early 30s, he met a lovely lady named Luella, whom he came to know and love. I will never forget the summer day, a Wednesday. He brought her to my home to share dinner with me and my family. As I became acquainted with Luella, he quietly left the house and picked a rose in my yard, which he brought to her. We spent a pleasant evening, and they went on their way. On Friday of that same week, he took Luella out to an early dinner, since the next day he had to report at 3 a.m. for his Marine obligation to Camp Lejeune in North Carolina. Upon his arrival, he was told by an officer that he had to return immediately to New Hampshire to be questioned by the police, since Luella had gone missing. It wasn't until many years later he learned that Luella had been murdered by an ex-boyfriend. This was a trauma that left a hole in his heart all his life. Dennis was able to continue his teaching even after this life-changing event, and he found meaning in what he referred to as my home in Derryfield, devoting himself to the needs of his students. We enjoyed conversations about his classroom when he visited our home in the summers. He also shared Christmas and Thanksgiving with family, always returning home with enough turkey for a generous sandwich and a large slice of apple pie. His years of coaching satisfied his passion for basketball, a passion denied to him for various reasons in his teenage years. His love for his boys was tangible. One of my conversations with him during a Christmas visit ended in a rather heated debate over commitment to this team. His stance was that commitment to the team took precedence over everything. My argument was, family comes first. He insisted that if an athlete wanted to play on his team, family vacations, trips, even holidays should be ignored, and he would show up for practice at all games. Never did we solve this dilemma, since I still insist that family trumps all. I'm sure some are here in this classroom who know exactly what, in this room, that know exactly what I'm talking about. One of the joys of my life was hearing that his team had made state champion and was very happy to be given a seat next to him at the celebration dinner. His own family also enjoyed following him and his academic team on TV as they excelled in the Granite State Challenge, proving that his coaching abilities were not only basketball, but in the academic arena as well. As you know, Dennis was famous, or maybe infamous, at school for his plaid pants, turtlenecks, and his unique mustache, which he wore his entire life. In 2002, he asked me to be his power of attorney and a healthcare proxy, a duty I naively accepted, having little comprehension of its true meaning. In 2016, for the first time in 48 years, his chair at graduation was empty. This was an immediate red flag, and after the ceremony, Jennifer Melkonian and 2 others rushed to his home and discovered that he had taken a terrible fall on his treadmill 3 days before. The treadmill was still running, and he had not been able to get up enough to turn it off. He spent many painful hours while the treadmill did its terrible work. I was called and rushed to the hospital to sit with him in his semi-conscious state. When one of the nurses came to his room to take his vital signs, I heard him say in a near whisper, but with great urgency, "If you touch my mustache, I'll have to kill you." His recovery was slow and painful, and he longed to get back to Derryfield to complete his lifetime dream of teaching for 50 years. But fate knew otherwise, and so became a long decline, which made teaching impossible. Over the years of decline, I found a new bond with my brother. I loved him as a big brother and was able to perform my duties with a spirit of caring and compassion. His unexpected death was a total surprise, even though family knew he was in declining health. My main purpose in relating these facts about his life as I knew him is to thank Derryfield, its faculty, its many students whom he cherished, for fully embracing him in the Derryfield family and giving him a purpose and the rewards of a life well lived. Everyone in this room will never forget him. I would also like to share a poem that was given to me by another family member. Weep not for me, though I have gone into that gentle night. Grieve if you will, but not for long. Upon my soul's sweet flight I am at peace. My soul's at rest. There is no need for tears. For with your love I was so blessed for all those many years. There is no pain. I suffer not. The fear is now all gone. Put now these things out of your thoughts. In your memory I live on. Remember not my fight for breath. Remember not the strife. Please do not dwell upon my death, but celebrate my life. Thank you.
Thank you, Caroline. Please welcome Colonel Dave Grasso, member of the fine class of 1978, who will share a commander's tribute.
In the United States military, when one of our own falls in combat, we honor them overseas with a memorial ceremony, and generally the commander will give a tribute in the honor of that departed fallen soldier, sailor, airman, or Marine. Back here in the United States, when one of our own falls, we get dressed up in a uniform. This is our highest class of uniform that we can wear in the United States Army. I'm really proud to be this son of New Boston, New Hampshire, who's a retired soldier, is able to honor another son of New Boston who is a Marine. I've only worn this uniform 3 times with all these decorations. One was the death of one of my soldiers killed in Iraq. One was the day I retired from active duty in 2015. And the third time is today. Dennis F. Holland, Selective Service number 271742218, entered the United States Marine Corps in the summer of 1967. After completing his initial Maroon recruit training, recognized throughout the world in the United States military as one of the most rigorous and challenging recruit training experiences throughout the world, Private First Class Holland underwent his military occupational specialty training at Camp Pendleton, California, to be trained as a field artillery fire controlman. Over the course of his military service, Mr. Holland served his country for over 10 years as a Marine in various capacities and locations, culminating his service in the United States Marine Corps at Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. Being a fire control specialist or controlman for the field artillery is a very demanding job in the military. It requires significant academic and mathematical proficiency. It requires tremendous assessment and information processing skills as an individual. And in the end, having the competence that makes sure that you as a fire controlman, the fire control specialist, process and issue the right calls for fire for the delivery of artillery fire on designated targets. These are artillery projectiles and munitions that routinely have casualty producing radius that is measured in tens, if not hundreds of meters. And those munitions are called upon often to be delivered in the closest proximity to friendly forces, as close as 200 meters to 100 meters. It requires an incredible amount of maturity in a very young soldier, sailor, airman, or in this case, this Marine. Being up there, being a fire control specialist, ranks up there, in my opinion, as being a combat medic in terms of the margin for error. There's really absolutely no margin for error when you're dealing with artillery fire. Private First Class Holland's performance of duty as a student in the field artillery course was recognized and commended on December 14th, 1967 by his commanding officer, Lieutenant Colonel E.A. Stegall, who awarded him a meritorious mast, which read, "Your performance as a student in the field artillery fire controlman course reflects conscientious devotion to duty, untiring effort for self-improvement, and is in keeping with the highest standards of the Marine Corps, with a final grade point average of 99.4. No surprises, right? You were graduated first in your class of 25 students. The Marine Corps is known for a lot of different things. Handing out praise is not one of them. For Mr. Holland, Private First Class Holland, to earn that meant that he went over and above in a very early stage of his military career. The meritorious mast tradition comes from a Navy tradition of gathering the crew around the mast of a sailing ship to deliver punishments and rewards. In the modern Marine Corps, it's written recognition that Marine's of work well done and is of greater value of a letter of appreciation or letter of commendation. It's my distinct honor to recognize the patriotism and service of Private First Class Holland. Mr. Holland served his country during a time of war for over 10 years in the United States Marine Corps. He balanced his military service obligations of at least one complete weekend a month and then 2-week annual training camps each summer with the opportunity to serve at his newest opportunity to serve, which is the Derryfield School. Serving his country from 1967 to around 1977 as a Marine, I'm sure it was an interesting time for Mr. Holland as it was for the other veterans and service members who served during our nation's second longest war. On a personal note, I learned so much from Mr. Holland as a teacher, as a mentor, as a basketball coach. Among the many life lessons, I learned the tremendous importance of personal, mental, and physical discipline, the incredible value of the needs of the team way before the desires for oneself. And some of my first leadership lessons on how to be a hard but fair leader, I learned from him. I'll always remember him as he was. For many of us, Vince Perrone, one of my best friends of all of my life, he and I called him LGD, Lord God Denny. I'm not sure if he ever knew that. Haven't been afraid of much in the last 40-something years, but I had a healthy fear of that man. To me, he always will be a titan who walked these hallways here. He walked this earth with an incredible sense of style, sometimes with a turtleneck, sometimes with an impossibly incredible mustache. But most of all, I'm going to cherish him as a teacher and coach who is just a tremendous force of direct and utter caring discipline, who invested everything into all of us, and he gave all of himself to all of us. I never had a single moment of interaction with Mr. Holland in all the years I played basketball for him, was taught by him in math class, interacted with him here in Derryfield and outside of Derryfield over the years, which was not meaningful in some intrinsic way. And I'm so very thankful that over the course of the last year that I was able to spend some very special times with Mr. Holland, reconnecting and going over our shared memories of the Derryfield varsity boys basketball program with him and David Larrabee. The last time I saw Mr. Holland was in August, and David Larrabee and I had an occasion to go visit him. And I was sitting on his couch, and I looked down, and right to my side was a stack of scorebooks from the years that he had coached. And on the very top was 1978. And I had an opportunity. I didn't put it there. David Larrabee didn't put it there. I really doubt that Mr. Holland put it there. But God put it there. Because at that moment, David Larrabee and I and Mr. Holland were able to reminisce and go over specific games from that year. What a treasure. I am just so thankful for that. The United States Marine Corps motto is Semper Fidelis, always faithful. So at the heart of it, as Caroline Hughes so eloquently put, and as he lived his life, Mr. Holland lived his life, and he will always be a Marine. At a military funerals honor ceremony, the highest ranking officer involved in the ceremony will present the United States flag to the designated next of kin of the deceased Marine, and that officer will give a simple, direct, and meaningful statement to the next of kin.
Thank you, Dave, for helping all of us to understand more deeply what Dennis's service was all about. Now I'd like to welcome to the stage a member of the class of 2009, Sandy Stonebraker. She is a special alum in that she represents the many graduates of Derryfield who were inspired to go into education as a result of knowing Dennis and being taught by Dennis. She is currently a teacher at Braintree High School. Sandy.
I am nervous. And I talk in front of students every day, so I'm like, how is this any different? Hearing that Mr. Holland never took a sick day, it kind of makes me laugh because I skipped a class to be here today. So there's a piece of me that's like, would he not appreciate the fact that I did that? Ever since Derryfield reached out about speaking at today's event, I've struggled to adequately put into words everything this man meant to so many people. I kept sitting down at my computer and trying to write this speech, and then kept erasing or deleting and kept going back. And I kept feeling a lot of pressure to get it right. Because reality is this: what can I possibly say that will somehow convey how amazing of a mentor and teacher Mr. Holland was? Like so many students before me, initially, Mr. Holland scared me a lot. Let's be real and honest here. At 6 foot something, the guy can be a little intimidating with his turtleneck, his stature, and his mustache. But the minute that you actually took the time to get to know him, he quickly became one of the warmest, most lovable teachers at Derryfield. It is not often you meet a teacher who loves what he does so much he breaks multiple pieces of chalk during a class. He would get so excited about math that he would like smack the board, and it would cause the chalk to break. So he would just have piles of chalk on the side of his board. And you would think that the problem would be resolved when they switched from a chalkboard to a whiteboard. But no, he would somehow manage to smack the whiteboard marker, which would smush the tip of that whiteboard marker in so that it would be rendered unusable. And as a teacher, and I use these whiteboard markers, I look at them and I'm like, that has to be a really hard smack. Like, I don't know how he did it. He was one of those teachers who would go out of his way to help his students, and he genuinely wanted every single one of us to succeed. When someone approached him about wanting to double up in a math so they could end up taking AP Calculus before graduating, he found a way to happen. If a kid wanted to learn and was ambitious, he was psyched to teach them, even if it meant having a class of only 2 students. He was one of those teachers that every single student in the school knew, even if you didn't have a class with him. A lot of students knew him as a fellow cheerleader because he was always going to sports games to support the Cougars. In fact, Mr. Holland was so well known throughout the school that when a senior, my sophomore or freshman year, dressed up like him for Halloween, everyone in the entire school appreciated his costume, and he won the school-wide costume contest. I wonder how many people ended up pursuing STEM fields because of him. To be honest, I did not graduate Derryfield thinking I'd grow up to become a math teacher. It was the farthest thing from my mind. However, as I found myself slowly becoming a teacher in this path, it became more and more clear that my goal was to become the next Mr. Holland in some other school. I wanted to be that teacher, the teacher that inspires students every day and encourages them to pursue and love math, the teacher that every student knows and loves. As a teacher, I constantly find myself remembering him fondly as I interact with my own students. I am always faced with this very strange deja vu when something comes out of my mouth that he used to say to me. For example, I constantly tell my students to think before you speak. And I talk about the little man in the calculator that will freak out if you try and divide by 0. I have not yet told my students to push some buttons on your calculator, and I've never said to them, boy, don't rush me. But you never know. He was a teacher for 50 years, and I'm only in my 5th year. So potentially come talk to me in about 20 years, and I'll have a bunch more that I'm sure I've said. When I taught a calculus course for the first time, I put this enormous pressure on myself to be as good as he was. And I'll be honest, I was not at all. However, every day that I'm in the classroom, I try to be more like him. I try to be genuine, excited, and inspiring. And I know that if I end up positively impacting my students half as much as he did, I'll consider myself a success. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy. And now let's welcome my colleague Alex Hunton and the Derryfield Concert Choir to the stage.
Song of mine will find its music.
Thank you to the concert choir. And now I would like to invite Dave Larrabee of the class of 1984, a member of the very famous basketball team and barely recognizable in his outfit today.
I've got some prepared remarks, but I first want to just a couple of quick thoughts and comments. First, the outfit. So for many of you, you know that Dennis was famous for wearing plaid pants and a turtleneck and penny loafers. And the penny loafers are especially good when he was coaching because would get our attention on the basketball court. And there might have been some words that were said along with that sort of supported the effort. But it's my way of sort of donning my cap to his sense of style as a coach and a teacher. Had an opportunity to get together with a lot of the basketball alums over the last couple of years. I think many of you are aware that there was an effort put forth to raise some money to name the basketball court in the new gymnasium after our coach, Dennis Holland. And so I've had an opportunity to really get to know several generations of basketball players at the Derryfield School. And so it's amazing that there's really almost 4 decades worth of students that were players that have gone on to their lives. And we've had a couple of times chances to get together, and one of them was just for lunch just before we got here. So we had some folks going back to class of 74, and we had an opportunity to sort of tell some stories about Dennis, and we each relayed a funny story, of some of which I'm not going to get into at this venue, but we also learned about some nicknames out there, which I didn't know about. We had Fat Dog, Bismo, and I don't know if I can read this, Bones. Bones, you out there? In any case, it was truly a lot of fun to get together and really share those stories. David mentioned that myself, Sean Stone, and Dave Grasso had a chance to sort of lead this effort, and then David and I got a chance to spend some time with Coach Holland towards the end. I think I might have been one of the last people to see him. I happened to be around. I'm fortunate enough to be in the area and saw him in the hospital. So I was quite taken aback when I learned of his passing, having just seen him a couple of days prior. And then afterwards, and this is one of the ways that I grieve, I took an opportunity about a week ago to sit down and put together an ode, a story about our coach and our mentor, Dennis Holland. So here it is. An ode to Coach Holland. We gather here today at DS, full of memories of a man who dedicated his life to the ideals of Derryfield, which Dennis Holland embodied through passion, teaching, and some strife. He left an indelible imprint on us all, students, faculty, administrators, even you in the back. We'd all stop dead in our tracks, some in horror, when he'd stop and say in that booming voice, "Hey, Mac!" Dennis was a man of grace and dignity, a sense of humor with resilience as the crossword clue that described this man of honor, a passion for teaching, a class act we were all proud we knew. He asked very little, yet gave very much, and embodied the spirit of DS. He thrived in the structure and pulse of the school. Mathematics, instructing, and coaching are what he did best. But my task today is to honor our coach through the lens of a player, only 35 years removed from that post, and reflect from the things that he taught us, and retell some of the stories of our mentor and our coach. He started right off his first year at Derryfield in '68. JV soccer, then boys varsity basketball was his call. Back then there was no gym, no home court, and legend have it, there wasn't even a ball. on he would go, teaching players, grooming vagabonds into successful young men. Some 30-odd years, 4 decades of players, thankful now as we were thankful then. 325 wins, 230 losses, a Hall of Fame coach, a successful career as one could boast. But I'm proud to have been a part of his only state championship, the win in '83 that mattered to him the most. What sticks out first was his look. Plaid pants, turtleneck, and loafers were his uniform on game night. For us newbies, the speech was given, you can wear whatever color sneakers you want, as long as they are predominantly white. At practice, when required, he would fill in t-shirt, short shorts, white Converse chucks, and a list of plays and drills, all neatly written down like a math equation, tucked up in his shorts, all timed, planned, and billed. His practices had a routine and cadence. One word barked and we knew what to do. He refused to acknowledge our antics, like we would dress up wearing all white, shirts, shorts, socks, and shoes. His practices were long on fundamentals and short on freelancing, for not very long would we sit. Although he did loosen up our senior year and let us play Kool & the Gang's Get Down on It. His game uniform donned, handlebars neatly trimmed, a tall imposing figure on the court of ball. But underneath that gruff exterior lay a thoughtful giant, firm but caring, insightful, and a mentor to us all. For me, it came through at the Schoolboy Golf Championship. I represented alone, a golf team was but a wish. But my mentor showed up, wearing his state championship jacket to watch me start, and for 4 hours later, watch me finish. Because that's what mentors do, give freely of themselves, and sometimes it included that famous glare. Dennis was always teaching lessons, showing support, being a mentor, even when you weren't aware. In the end, I think it was a love affair. In DS, he funneled passion, found purpose, and seeds were sown. So in some ways, we represent his offspring, all nurtured, mentored, and grown. So now we bid farewell to Coach Holland, as he is freed from his physical trials on earth due to fate. I'm sure he's in a better place, running around every morning up around the pearly gate. Thank you all for being here. Coach would be embarrassed for all the attention, to say the least. But for all of us former players, and to my friend, goodbye, Coach Holland. Hey, Mac, rest in peace.
Thank you, Dave. And now I'd like to introduce my colleagues, Betty Jibson and Bruce Burke, also longtime colleagues of Dennis.
Good afternoon. As Dr. Carter said, my name is Bruce Burke, and I have been Dennis's colleague since 1983. I want to offer my condolences to his family and his friends, and thank you for your tender care of Dennis during these last years.
I'm Betty Jibson. I was honored to be his colleague here starting in 1979. Dennis Holland was unique, brilliant and proud, an extremely private man who abhorred waste, wasted time, wasted words. To some, he seemed gruff, irascible, maybe intimidating, but in the words of Steve Mathis, he scared people because he cared less about being loved and more about loving everyone else.
It would be a difficult task, and maybe a terrible thing, to seek to reduce one's character to 2 words. But in the spirit of a man who rarely wasted words, when colleagues talk about Mr. Holland, 2 ideas come to mind: caring and standards.
caring. Dennis Holland was always the first one here at school in the morning, answering the phone, doing the New York Times crossword puzzle in ink. In fact, as his good friend Deb Allen suggested, if there are crossword puzzles in heaven, then today's clue would read something like this: one across, a person of grace and dignity, a class act. 13 letters, Dennis Holland. In the early 80s, he never replied to my good morning to him. But when my baby was born, Dennis Holland was the first one to send our family congratulations. A man of few words, but so caring. Another former colleague, Kathy Smith Badmington, who began her teaching career here at Derryfield 4 months after graduating from college, recounts the faculty meeting on her first morning. As a brand new college graduate, I was ready, sort of. I had even been prepped for the gruff Mr. Holland. What I wasn't prepped for was the love and care he gave me as I grew into my role as a teacher, a coach, an advisor, and as an adult. Caring. Caring? Dennis was our first environmentalist. Ate the same meager lunch every day. Had a well-established wardrobe that never changed. He was Mr. Sustainability before we knew that was a thing. He was caring to everyone in the community. We can't forget Ed Lemire's memory of Dennis's tenderness to Ed's daughter, Laura, and her ability and his willingness to let her call him Dennis the Menace. No one else dared do this. So caring.
Mr. Holland had such high standards, it was always an open question for the faculty if they should call him Mr. Holland or Dennis, or just avoid speaking to him. Standards. At first thought, this may not seem to be a compelling word choice, but Dennis, in everything that he did, he set a standard. While most of you knew him as a teacher, we had to coexist and sometimes even compete with Dennis. Okay, I will get to school before Dennis today. Nope. I will go to more athletic games than Dennis. Nope. Give more extra help. Nope. Get all those graded exams back the next day like Dennis. Nope. You know those wordy midterm comments? Nope. Dennis, succinct, caring, and to the point. Never a wasted word. The standard. School spirit? Who else drove a maroon Cougar to Derryfield for years? In all of this, Dennis acted without fanfare. True to his personality, he never sought the limelight. Former student and faculty member Steph McCusker comments, quote, "From both my stints, first as a player and later as a coach with a field hockey team, it is the image of his standing in a regular spot along the chain link fence when we were at home, and of his willowy, we know, well know now, turtleneck-clad figure in the distance at all the away venues. He would always slip away at the end of the game before we could thank him for being there." The standard. So many have written that there can never be another one like Mr. Holland. In other words, he set a standard that is unassailable. Who presided over National Honor Society and made it run like clockwork? Dennis. Organized AP exams? Dennis. Revised student schedules that we heard earlier again and again and again. But here's the clincher, that Dennis did it better than our current software system. Just saying. I do not know if Mr. Holland would be disappointed or rather surprised if I did not try to offer some levity here. So those of you who worked at Derryfield in the 1980s and 1990s remember well the love affair between Jan Steele and Dennis Holland. There was a certain anticipation in a faculty meeting when Jan might go off on a tangent. And one could hear Dennis grumble something, and then Jan would spout the inevitable, "Oh, Dennis." Or Dennis would deliver some conversation squashing comment, and Jan would reprimand him with an "Oh, Dennis." And then Dennis would drop his head, and in that gruff voice you could hear, "Oh, Jan." I've had more than one faculty member remark to me that he wishes, or they wish, they could be at the pearly gates to see Jan greet Dennis.
Unique can be an overused word, but Dennis Holland and Derryfield were a unique combination. There will never be another like him for our institution. As Dick Anthony remarked, his gruff exterior fooled no one. In the student Derryfield world, there would be no higher currency than a hug from Dennis Holland. Dennis, we miss you. We know you left us as you lived your life, proud and private and caring. Godspeed.
Thank you so much. As we've said many times today, Dennis was not someone who needed or wanted the spotlight. So in December of 2016, when he asked to speak at the all-school assembly, we knew he had something important to say. And here's what he had to share.
I get very nervous when I'm standing up here, so if you see my hand shaking, don't worry about it. I'm really okay. I've been thinking about something for quite a while now, and I thought it would resonate with many of you in the audience. As many of you know, I spent most of the summer and the fall in either a hospital or a rehab. What I experienced was an almost overwhelming amount of caring from all parts of the Derryfield community. Current students and alumni, colleagues, and current and past Derryfield parents. This included over 100 cards and letters, gifts, many visitors, and phone calls. I also believe that I could feel support from people who had me in their thoughts or prayers. There were a few Derryfield people that made a special effort to really help me when I needed it the most. If you've ever been in a hospital, you know how slowly the hours go by, and so it was quite nice when some of them agreed to play cards or have a good conversation from time to time. To them, I am especially grateful, and I hope they believe that if our situations were reversed, I would do exactly the same thing for them. What this all pointed out to me is that a phenomenon I had experienced before at Derryfield, but not to this degree. What I'm talking about is a school community of adults and students who genuinely care about each other. In my experience, Derryfield really does what they say they do, that we really care about each other. Our feelings in that regard are as genuine as I've ever seen. In the month that I've been back at school, I've experienced the same kind of caring. Students who I do not know and who do not know me have welcomed me back and helped me with answers to my questions. I have seen students who care for each other and for the adults in the community, and adults who really care for students. My senses in this regard were, of course, deepened while I was away, but I plan to commit myself to being even more caring about others in the future. I might even lead a campaign to make caring a 6th Derryfield core value. I think it's that important. Working with caring people is just one of the reasons why I'm proud to be a part of the Derryfield community. If you think you missed me while I was gone, trust me, I missed you all more than you missed me.
Well, I'm pleased to let you know that the wise Board of Trustees took Dennis's advice and made caring the 7th core value of Derryfield School. And is evident by all of you who are here today and all of the people watching around the country or even the world, Dennis was clearly right. Before we go, though, I would like to welcome our friend Chuck to give us the benediction. Thanks.
Let us be in the spirit of prayer. Creator Spirit, as we conclude this celebration of Dennis Holland's life, touch and heal the empty space created by his passing. And let the memories shared today and those that emerge later fill us with abundant light, peace, serenity, and thankfulness for being a part of his life. In the coming days, weeks, months, and years, we will continue to miss Dennis, a treasured friend embedded in the Derryfield community. I close with 2 poems that I hope will provide comfort individually and collectively. The first is by John O'Donoghue, an Irish cleric, called Nacht, translated blessing. On the day when the weight deadens on your shoulders and you stumble, may the clay dance to balance you. And when your eyes freeze behind the gray window and the ghost of loss gets into you, may a flock of colors, indigo, red, green, and azure blue, come to awaken in you a meadow of delight. When the canvas frays in the Cleric of the thought and stain of ocean blackens beneath you, may there come across the waters a path of yellow moonlight to bring you safely home. May the nourishment of the earth be yours. May the clarity of light be yours. May the fluency of the ocean be yours. May the protection of the ancestors be yours. And so, may a slow wind work these words of love around you, an invisible cloak to mind your life. The second is Elegy Poem number 3 by Wendell Berry. He goes free of the earth. The sun of his last day sets clear in the sweetness of his liberty. The earth recovers from his dying, the hallow of his life remaining in all his death leaves. Radiances know him. Grown lighter than breath, he is set free in our remembering. Grown brighter than vision, he goes dark into the life of the hill that holds his peace. He's hidden among all that is and cannot be lost. He is hidden among all that is and cannot be lost. May the peace of the Creator Spirit be with you now and forever. Hallelujah and amen.